America, bonjour, hi, Canada, greetings to everyone listening east to west, north to south, watching on HughHewitt.com via Univision, watching on Town Hall TV. It's very good to have you. I won't be in tomorrow. Kurt Schlichter is here for me tomorrow as I'm up in the Valley. Then I'm going to Cleveland. I'll be back on Tuesday. Kurt will be here on Monday as well. I begin this hour with United States Senator Tom Cotton. Good morning, Senator.
Good morning to you. It's good to be on with you.
I begin with a story that broke 44 minutes ago. Iran state TV says Revolutionary Guard forces have seized a foreign tanker with 12 crew accused of smuggling oil. It is unclear to me whether this is the same tanker that disappeared that was believed to be based out of the UAE, but they are claiming they've got a tanker. Your response, Senator Cotton?
Hugh, I don't know the details of the report either, so I won't speculate about that specific incident, but obviously Iran has been harassing commerce on the high seas throughout the Persian Gulf, Strait of Hormuz, and Gulf of Oman for several months now, which is a tradition in keeping with their 40 years of harassing the freedom of commerce on the high seas. Traditionally, one of the quickest ways to get into a shooting match with the United States. That's one reason why I've said what they're doing warrants retaliatory action. The president may have exercised forbearance, but I wouldn't expect him or any nation whose vessels are threatened by Iran to exercise that forbearance indefinitely.
Whether it's one or two tankers, and the New York Times seems to suggest it's two different tankers, they certainly have attacked at least four different tankers now. And they've yesterday launched drone attacks, or the Houthis, using Iranian technology, launched drone attacks on two Saudi Arabian airports, through which I'm sure Americans pass. We really can't allow this to go on, can we, Senator?
No, Hugh, we can't. And you're right that hundreds, if not thousands, of Americans fly through those Saudi Arabian airports every day. One reason why I've said military retaliatory strikes are warranted, Hugh, is the lessons that we learned in the 1980s. You often cite Ronald Reagan's decision in 1998 to sink about half of the Iranian Navy, and Iran changed its ways shortly after that. However, the full story is that for about 4 years, going back to 1984, Iran was allowed to mine those waters and to attack commerce on the high seas and largely get away with it. So I fear that if we don't draw a firm line and say to Iran, you're not going to continue to do this, we'll only see the continued escalation that Ronald Reagan witnessed in the 1980s, and ultimately it will be targeting American vessels or manned American aircraft.
So now I want to switch to another kind of threat. The Washington Post this morning has a story. You've downloaded FaceOff. Here's what you've just done to your privacy. It turns out that's a Russian app. It turns out it could potentially suck every photo out of your phone into the cloud. It turns out you've given them a license to use a lot of what they sucked out of your phone. Honest to goodness, Tom Cotton, how did that end up in both the Apple and the Google store?
Yeah, I think that's a good question, Hugh. I haven't downloaded FaceOff, I can tell you that. I mean, I look in the mirror every day and see the effects of aging, so I don't need an artificial app to do so.
Well, you need to look in my mirror. And when your hair goes white at 30, you just don't ever change.
Well, you don't have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old.
Oh, there you go.
Those white things on your head are. I think there'll be some inquiries in Washington about exactly what happened. The standards that the App Store or other app distributors have that allow such apps to go out widely to the American people. But what I would say to your listeners is be very discriminating in the way you download apps. If you have apps on your phone that you don't use, delete them all. There's no reason to keep them there. Each one of those is a potential door into your phone and therefore all of your private data. And to take steps to try to verify the origin of every app that you download onto your phone or your tablet or your computer.
Senator Cotton, you are one of the people who are leading the charge against Huawei ZTE. How dangerous is our phone in terms of a surveillance device, both those that we have in our pockets right now, those in our cars next to us, and Alexa in our home? I mean, what is happening to the surveillance society? Do people really understand the risks they are running?
Hugh, your phone can be turned into a tracking and surveillance tool. There's no doubt about it. Daniel Silva's latest book is out this week. I haven't had a chance to read it, but he's written about this in the past, and most of what he writes about is not fiction. It is fact. There are ways to guard against that through, making sure that your software is updated, upgrading to new phones, and being judicious about the kind of apps you download. But there's no doubt that with all of the advances that modern technology has brought us, the way it makes life easier for you to visit with your grandchildren when you're away from them, or to keep up with the news or sports scores, or to email friends and so forth, that you're also surrendering a degree of privacy, making your data less secure. Again, there are steps you can take to try to minimize that risk, but it's a risk that we all live with, and everyone needs to be aware of you.
Now, your colleague Josh Hawley has made it his goal to bring antitrust scrutiny to bear on the FANG stocks: Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, and Google. Netflix is getting hammered by the market today because their subscriber base dropped. They're down 10%. But let's talk specifically about Facebook and Google, Senator Cotton. From the perspective as a member of the Intel Committee and as a member of the Armed Services Committee, are Facebook and Google worse actors, the same sort of actors as Amazon, Netflix, and Apple?
Hugh, I don't want to get into ranking private companies based on their actions, but I will say, without a much more developed factual record, and there are congressional committees like the Intelligence Committee, or like this week, the Banking Committee, where we had Facebook in to talk about their new digital currency, Libra. But there's no doubt these companies need heightened scrutiny. And I have concerns not just about the threats to privacy and security, Hugh, but also the way they discriminate against conservative viewpoints. I mean, this is one question I had at the Banking Committee this week. My Democratic colleagues on the Banking Committee like to send letters to big Wall Street banks telling them not to do business with gun manufacturers or other disfavored customers. What's to stop Facebook, which is, as Mark Zuckerberg said, populated by or is an extremely left-wing place, to stop just individuals like you and your listeners from using its digital currency to buy a gun at a gun retailer, or go to Jack Phillips Cake Shop in Colorado, or for that matter, go to a gas station and pay for your gas because it's a fossil fuel. I think Facebook and other companies need to have answers for this.
Is Libra imminent in your view? That's the new currency, the new Bitcoin, sort of neo-Bitcoin that Facebook is thinking about developing and launching. Do you think it's close, and do you think it's a good idea?
So the commitment that Facebook made not only to the Banking Committee this week, but also to regulators, is they would not be moving forward in rapid fashion until they knew the kind of regulatory environment in which they operated, and they had taken steps to allay the concerns of some of the banking regulators as well as the oversight committees in Congress. I hope that's the case. I think digital payment systems are, of course, going to be the way of the future. People are already using that through Apple Pay or other kinds of electronic wallets. But there are real concerns about sovereignty and the basis of modern economics if we move to a currency that's not controlled by sovereigns. I mean, that's one of the few enumerated powers of the federal government is to create the money supply.
So talk to me as we close about Google and their complicity with the camps that Eli Lake and I were talking about for the Uyghurs in China. Secretary of State Pompeo was on the show yesterday specifically calling out Chinese concentration camps of Uyghurs, and Eli Lake talking about how it's a brainwashing exercise. Google is, I think, sold them the means of control. Is that a concern to you?
Yeah, so it is a concern that any American company like Google or Hikvision or anyone else would cooperate with the Chinese Communist Party, knowing that technology is being used for the mass detention, re-education, Soviet style of millions of Uyghurs in northwest China. And that's not just a matter of human rights; it's also a strategic concern because China wants to secure its hinterland so it can project power outside of the Chinese mainland and threaten the United States. So I think it's a serious concern, and I would encourage every American company not to do business with the Chinese Communist Party on those terms, especially if you have sensitive technology that can be used by the Chinese Communist Party and the People's Liberation Army to challenge the United States in geopolitics or to engage in mass oppression of the Chinese people.
1 minute left. Would that admonition include Facebook, which it seems to be so innocuous to people, right? They're sharing pictures of kids and grandchildren. Should Facebook be selling its wares to China?
That would very much include Facebook, Hugh, or again, any tech company or social media company, any kind of advanced manufacturing company. One of the things one of the steps the president has taken towards Huawei and ZTE is to cut them off from the advanced components like semiconductor chips they need to build 5G networks around the world. We should not be the proverbial capitalists who sell the rope the communists will use to hang us all.
Senator Tom Cotton, always a pleasure, always on top of the most important issue of the day. Thank you, Senator. Follow him on Twitter @SenTomCotton. Follow me to the next segment.